Hello, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're making macaroni and cheese, and I've made macaroni and cheese in the past. However, I have not made this recipe in the past, so it's gonna be kind of a first run at it. I picked this one because it seemed like the more leaner aspect of other recipes where it kind of called for just a large quantity of just 4 cuts of cheese rather than some other recipes which kind of said very specific and a lot of different ones, which probably builds a better flavor profile. But I just wanted to be lazy and run to Costco and just buy a big chunk of cheese. So I went with this one. If the flavor's not there, the next time I try one, I'll try getting the different varieties of cheese. I know that's gonna bump up the price quite a bit because buying in bulk is where it's at. I will say, if you wanna get cheese and you got a Trader Joe's nearby, they usually have really good prices on cheese rather than a normal grocery store. I could be wrong. I don't know about Whole Foods. I haven't really looked at their cheese. I don't know where they stack up. But from my experience, usually Trader Joe's seems like the way to go. So if this is just a life tip. If you need cheese, give Trader Joe's a go. All of that kind of aside, mac and cheese we're making today. It's a bit of a side dish. I'm doing this as my Meatless Monday. I don't know if I'm gonna classify it as a Meatless Monday because it feels kind of cheating. I don't know, to me at least, mac and cheese doesn't seem like it falls into vegetarian category, even though it is, but you know what I'm saying? There's some foods that just don't feel like they go in the category that they are. It's the whole oh, tomato's a fruit kind of thing. It's but is it? I know it is, but is it? Anyway, I'm making it this week because I made pulled pork yesterday and I wanted macaroni and cheese as a side. And instead of making a ton of meals this week, because pulled pork is essentially just my meal for the week, it's 7 pounds of food. I know, but it's on sale and it's delicious. So I do things like this to kind of flow everything together instead of making multiple meals and then kind of being a little bit more of a glutton than I need to be. So here we are making mac and cheese together, and hopefully it's good. I'll let you know at the end if this is a yay or nay recipe, but maybe we'll try a fancy one in the future if this one is terrible. All that being said, let's run through the ingredients and then we'll get into cooking. Elbow pasta, cheese, cornstarch, milk, pepper, Old Bay or seasoning salt, butter, leftover ends of bread, and paprika. The first step is to make the pasta itself. Now, depending on if you're making gluten-free or normal pasta, the time's gonna be different. And then even within gluten-free pastas, whatever it's made out of will cause different times to be required. So look at the box that you're using, follow those instructions, and then once you finish making it, make sure that you drain it. And then we're gonna use that pasta later on in the recipe. So just hang tight. The next step is to melt the butter in a pan with the spices, so that's the pepper and the seasoning salt. I'm using Old Bay. I'm gonna kind of use half Old Bay, half salt because Old Bay is pretty spice heavy and I believe seasoning salt is not quite as intense as that. So I'm gonna kind of mellow it out a little bit by doing that. And then once the butter has melted, we're gonna remove that from heat. Now in a bowl, we want to mix the cornstarch and the milk. Just mix that up with a whisk until it is smooth. So you don't want any cornstarch chunks. The next step is to take that milk cornstarch mix and mix it with the butter and then put that back on heat. So just pour that into the pan that you already have the butter in and then put that back on heat and then heat it until it thickens. The recipe says about 5 minutes, but it's a lot of liquid that you're kind of going from cold that you're gonna have to thicken. So I feel like it might take more than 5 minutes, but I am willing to be proven wrong. All right, so I was right. I was gonna say kind of right, or technically right, but I was, not to brag, but I nailed it. At about 5 minutes, it still kind of felt like the same consistency as it started with, and it wasn't until around like the 9-minute mark that I kind of started thickening it up a little bit. So, I don't know like what thickness you're going for, like maybe I over thickened it. I don't know, we'll find out at the end with the final product. But the next step is to add in the cheese. So we're just gonna do almost all the cheese. You're gonna reserve some for later when we're gonna sprinkle that on top, so don't just dump all of it in there. Read the instructions, put that much in. I'm not gonna show you how to shred cheese, but I will say don't do it by hand because it's miserable. The first time I ever made mac and cheese by hand, I did that and I hated my life. If you have a food processor that has a little like cheese grater attachment, use that. You could also just buy shredded cheese, but I don't think this recipe says it, but most recipes say like freshly grated cheese usually tastes better. And I have a Costco close by, so I just bought a big chunk of cheese. And I didn't need that whole big chunk that I showed in the thing. It was probably like 3/4 of that I needed to make the amount of the 4 cups of cheese that we need. Now that we got that delicious cheese sauce and remember the pasta that we cooked earlier, now we're gonna put both of those into a large bowl, mix it together, and then pour that into the casserole dish. Now the next step is going to be to put the remaining cheese that we kind of kept aside on top of the macaroni and cheese in the casserole dish. And we also, I don't think you have to. I don't know if it says optional or not, but they talk about like a kind of like a breadcrumb topping, and that involves just blending up a few slices of bread, some softened butter, and some paprika. And this is kind of like the first time, because usually I feel like I've seen it they're just like breadcrumbs. And this is one where it actually essentially tells you like to make your own breadcrumbs, which I do all the time because gluten-free bread is not cheap. And so anytime that I eat a loaf of bread, I always take the end pieces off and freeze them. And I save that for if I ever need breadcrumbs, I can just blend them up and then you have free breadcrumbs. Obviously, if you use gluten products, it's vastly cheaper and you don't need to do this kind of like frugal life approach. But if you want to save a few bucks here and there, regardless of your gluten intake, just freeze the unused pieces of bread that you have and then use them when you need breadcrumbs. Case in point, this recipe. Now that the whole macaroni and cheese dish is complete, we want to put that in the oven at 375 and bake for 25 to 30 minutes. All right, the moment you've all been waiting for. First off, just take a look at that. Look, it's beautiful. I could show you the whole thing, but it's heavy and very hot. And so you'll just get to see the easy to handle single slice. But because this is essentially my first time making it, gotta do a taste test so that we can give it an accurate rating at the end. It's got a good consistency, so already off to a good start. Good color to it. High hopes. First off, the pasta, I will say I kind of did 1 minute less because I was looking at it and kind of did a taste test and it felt done, so I didn't cook it the full, I think 7 minutes that the box said, and they are perfect. So that was a good life choice there. Overall, it's not as cheesy as I would like, which I feel like is probably just because I'm used to like highly processed macaroni and cheese when I do have it. So that could be kind of a factor there. Maybe it could be solved by having a different variety of cheeses in there, maybe getting a sharper cheddar or something like that to kind of give it a little bit more kick to it. But it still has like good flavor there. It might need a little bit more salt or something. It does have a little bit of a bland to it, which I don't know if the seasoning salt would do it, because to me, Old Bay is pretty salty, so I feel like the spices involved in this recipe might just be lower than they need to be. So I don't know how to, I mean, I guess I could sprinkle salt on top. I don't know if that would fix this problem. However, like I kind of stated before, this is going to be more of a side. And when I eat food, I just kind of pile it all together. So the flavor of this will kind of be more subtle with all of the other flavors that I will have on my plate. So I think it being a little bland isn't the end of the world there. It as a main dish, it definitely takes a little bit away from it. But I mean, I will like that top kind of crispy layer. It's not as pretty as like some mac and cheeses that you've seen where it's just like that beautiful kind of like bubbly goodness. But if I turn on the broiler, that probably would have hit that there. Maybe a little bit more cheese on top could add to the cheesy flavor. But I mean, to me, like the texture wise and kind of like that crunch is pretty good for the top of that. Overall, solid mac and cheese. Rating for it, I don't know if it's necessarily my fault in the cooking process or the recipe itself. So I don't know, who to blame here. I mean, arguably it's probably at the end of the day my fault, because I put it all together and could probably have tasted more and then like added more salt in different places or something like that. So I'm gonna give this one a 3 out of 5. It's a solid side, but as a main dish, you might need to tweak it a fair bit, but I mean, it's beautiful. So you can impress people with pictures by making this. However, taste-wise, I feel like it wouldn't be the star of the show. So that's why I gave it that rating. And on that note, bye Mom, still not dead. See ya.